Apple's iPad lineup has never been as robust or appealing as it is right now as we enter 2022, with a tablet for every price point and use case, from the $1,100 iPad Pro to the $330 budget iPad. And with a decent bit of selection, it can be tough to know which iPad is best for you, so today we're going to determine just that. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I've been meaning to do this iPad buying guide for a very long time, but hey, better late than never. Going into this, I wasn't sure if I should just talk about what Apple currently sells, or if I should discuss used options as well. I mostly recommend buying new from Apple or refurbished, as the used options on websites like Craigslist and eBay, in my experience, tend to be quite overpriced. So what we'll be doing today is starting with the very best iPad Pro and moving our way down the list. I'll have timestamps in the description if you want to skip to anything specific, and at the very end we'll have a summary and my overall recommendations for your price range. And just before we talk iPad Pro, I will say by and far the best value iPad is simply iPad, the lower tier option on Apple's site. It's currently the 9th generation, and it's about as bare bones as an iPad gets, still with the old Touch ID home button design, a non-laminated display that's still Retina, so it looks nice, first generation Apple Pencil support, and hey, it's actually the last iPad with a headphone jack. I highly recommend this iPad because it's the best possible bang for your buck of probably any product on Apple's website, as underneath that simple exterior lies extremely powerful hardware, with Apple's A13 Bionic chipset that'll last you years and years of software support, and a device that feels fast with no issues. The iPad can do pretty much anything even the Pro can do, just in a less appealing package. And if that's something you don't mind, it's the one to buy. $330 is an absolute steal for what you get here. But with that out of the way, let's rewind a bit back to the best of the best in the M1 iPad Pro. An iPad about as powerful as many of Apple's current Macintosh computer offerings, with that M1 chipset powering it all. Of course, it's still running iPadOS, which is basically just iOS, and it doesn't even come close to being as versatile as a Mac, but it's still really darn cool, and combined with the expensive Magic Keyboard accessory, it gets pretty darn close to being a laptop replacement, though personally I'd rather go for the similarly priced MacBook Air. What stands out about the iPad Pro is without a doubt the absolutely gorgeous design, with thin rounded bezels surrounding that bright beautiful display, especially with mini LED on the larger model, mini LED being a relatively new technology that basically means content looks better than ever before, though the smaller iPad Pro still looks amazing. You also get 120Hz ProMotion on both models, doubling the frame rate versus lower tier 60Hz iPads, and giving a buttery smooth experience across the OS, just like the new iPhone 13 Pro has. Everything just feels faster and better on 120Hz, even if the experience isn't actually that much different functionally speaking. There are two size options here, with the 11-inch iPad Pro starting at $800 and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro starting at $1,100. Again, 12.9-inch has mini LED, but otherwise they're about the same. And for storage options, both come with 128 gigs at the lowest price, along with the colors Space Gray or Silver. iPad Pro is called Pro for a reason. It's blazing fast and about as premium as a tablet gets, but it's overwhelmingly overkill for the vast majority of people out there. I don't recommend the iPad Pro unless you really want it or are able to take advantage of the best-in-class hardware. The iPad Air or budget iPad would likely be a better choice for you, or, taking that money and buying a MacBook. But speaking of the iPad Air, moving one tier down from the Pro, we do indeed have the 4th generation iPad Air, basically a budget version of the 11-inch iPad Pro. Mind you, I say budget, but it's still a hefty $600, coming with 64 gigabytes of storage. The iPad Air also has a ton of different color options if that's something you're into. Already here, I'd say that the 11-inch Pro is probably worth the extra couple hundred, and it does double the amount of storage, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. The iPad Air is a fantastic device, marking an in-between option for those who don't need a Pro but want that newer full-screen design. It's compatible with the Apple Pencil 2nd generation, meaning it can stick to the side like with the Pro, and charges that way. It's a significant upgrade to the home button iPad and that 1st generation Apple Pencil, which still works great, but it looks silly and feels silly when you go to charge it, as it simply sticks out of the bottom of the device like so. Not exactly convenient. If you're someone who's wanting an iPad mainly for art or something similar involving the Apple Pencil, the Air is probably my recommendation. It has those benefits of the Pro design while still being at a much more reasonable price tag, as it's not quite so overkill hardware-wise. It has Apple's A14 chipset, which is extremely powerful, and that very nice 10.9-inch Retina display that does admittedly lack ProMotion, meaning it only runs at 60Hz, so it won't look as smooth, but again, functionally speaking, it doesn't really make a difference. We don't have Face ID, which is on the Pro, but instead we have a fingerprint sensor sensor on the top power button. There's a single 12 megapixel camera on the back versus the two lenses on the Pro, the regular 12 megapixel one and then an ultra wide 10 megapixel one. I didn't even mention these before because personally I've never considered the camera on an iPad to be that big a deal. As long as it can take pictures if I need it to for some reason, I'm happy, and the Air will more than do just that. It also has a lower quality 7 megapixel front facing camera versus 12 megapixels on the Pro, but it's more than good enough for FaceTime and I wouldn't worry about it. Like the Pro, we do have USB-C and no headphone jack. All in all, the Air is just a slightly watered down iPad Pro. This is the perfect iPad for an artist who enjoys using tablets or someone who wants that premium design without the hefty price tag. It's definitely worth the money in my eyes if it's the iPad you've been wanting. And then we have one more iPad before getting to the cheapest option, the brand new 2021 iPad mini 6th generation, which brings that same no home button design with Touch ID on the top power button, all in a smaller package. The display size is a solid 8.3 inches, making it a good bit smaller than 11 inches on the Pro or 10.9 on the Air, and it's actually a bit faster than the Air with Apple's A15 Bionic chipset, though the A14 is still plenty fast. You get a 12 megapixel camera on the back again, along with an upgraded 12 megapixel front-facing camera, at least upgraded compared to the Air. Right now, technically, it's a little bit lower spec, but it's not something that I think should deter buyers from it. Just keep in mind, some point 2022, you probably will see an upgrade, and I doubt there's too many changes beyond the internals. This is, after all, a fairly new design, but on the Mini here, we have USB-C again and 2nd gen Apple Pencil support, with a price tag of $500 for the 64GB model, and a few different color options. Comparing this to the $600 for the iPad Air, I'd say between those two, it mainly comes down to what size you prefer. Personally, I'd rather a bigger device with the Air, because my phone's already kind of big, but if the mini size really appeals to you, then you're actually getting a better device hardware-wise for $100 less, so don't be afraid to go for it. All in all, a solid option if you're wanting that new design without splurging for the iPad Pro. And now we come to the greatest value iPad of them all, iPad. To be specific, iPad 9th generation, released in late 2021, though as usual it didn't change much besides a spec upgrade. And that's a good thing because it keeps this iPad cheap. It's bare bones, basic, and an absolute beast, with Apple's A13 chipset on iPadOS 15. It's blazing fast for basically anything you could possibly do on an iPad. With this 9th gen iPad here, you're going to get years of updates, and it's going to handle anything you throw at it. If you want to use an Apple Pencil, you can. You'll just have to get the slightly awkward 1st generation one instead of the 2nd. Again, it feels great to use. There's no problem there. It's just charging it that's kind of annoying. My dad actually just bought the 9th generation iPad very recently at my recommendation, and as far as I know, he's absolutely loving it. It's a stellar machine and unbelievably good value. Unfortunately, he's out of town, which is why I'm using Apple's own footage and not my own B-roll. Anyways, the camera on the back is 8 megapixels, which might seem low, but it's honestly fine, and the front-facing camera is actually 12, better than the Air, and it all in all makes for a package about as good as you could hope for at just over $300. This is the iPad to buy for almost anyone. It's my recommendation now and forever, with Apple likely continuing those minor spec bumps for the foreseeable future, and that says a lot, I think, about just how solid this older design is. And this really is just going to be the best iPad for most people. So those are the iPads Apple sells brand new at the moment. They do, however, also often sell refurbished options. You can find them by scrolling to the bottom of Apple's website and clicking the link there for refurbished and clearance. I personally just bought the 2018 iPad Pro refurbished. That was the first one with that new design, and I'm absolutely loving it. It might be a bit older now, but I saved quite a bit of money getting it. You might see an iPad mini 5 refurbished. I think I'd pass on that one for the $339 when you could just get an iPad 9 for, well, actually $9 less, and it's bigger. They do often have that 2018 model. It's $520 right now. That's a pretty darn good deal. It's almost half the price of the current generation. It's something to consider for sure. The M1 chipset is amazing, but if you're mostly using your iPad for iPad things, it might be worth saving a little bit of money. And then you also have the 2020 iPad Pro, which I don't really recommend. All it really did over the 2018 was bring some camera improvements. Technically, it does have a faster chipset, but not by a significant margin. This also could be a cheaper way to get your hands on a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, if that's something you want. Like here, you've got that 2018 model for $629. You can even find older iPad Pros. Like right here is the refurbished 10.5-inch iPad Pro from, I guess this would be 2017. It does have 120 Hz on these models, but this one specifically, I would say is very much not worth it. It's quite expensive at $679 because it has 500 gigs of space, which is, I don't know why you would need that much space on an iPad, to be honest. I'd say this is about as close to buying used as I would get. Keep in mind, when it comes to Apple refurbished, it's not like refurbished on eBay. Most of the time, these are devices that were just returned, and Apple cleans them up, puts in a new battery, that kind of thing. Might be a couple minor scratches on it, but it's never anything that impedes the experience. On eBay, you never really know what you're getting, and people just overprice iPads so ridiculously. Recently, I did a review on the iPad Air 2, and if you look for one on eBay, you're looking at like 200 bucks American, sometimes less, but often even more. And then you've got the iPad 9, which is way better and 6 years newer for $130 more, really. Brand new. It's kind of a no-brainer, in my opinion. The $330 iPad is just such a good deal. So, as said before, I really think right now Apple's lineup is at its best because you have so many options and all of them are decent value. But for those who don't have extra pocket change, there's that really, really good value iPad. That to me is very important. Sure, for the right person, an $1,100 iPad Pro can be worth it, but every darn time, I'm gonna say the iPad 9 is better value because it is. You can do pretty much just the same things on it for a quarter of the price. So anyways, that's about it for today. Hopefully this helped you out, or maybe you found it interesting, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content similar to this. Oh, also comment down below what kind of iPad you're using or you're looking to buy. Just kind of curious there. You can follow me over on Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.